First, I will start with introduction to 1MDB. One Malaysia Development Berhad, also known as 1MDB, is a state-owned investment and development company established by the Malaysian federal government in 2009. It was founded by Muhammad Najib bin Abdul Razak, who was the Prime Minister of Malaysia in April 2009. Najib Razak also served as the chairman of 1MDB, while the company operated under the Ministry of Finance, Malaysia. The purpose of 1MDB is to attract foreign investments into Malaysia, to promote economic growth and national development, to strengthen Malaysia's global economic position, to create strategic partnerships with international investors, and to improve the country's economy through high-impact projects. Meanwhile, the objectives of 1MDB are to encourage foreign direct investment into Malaysia, to develop major infrastructure and real estate projects, to generate sustainable economic growth, to create job opportunities in Malaysia, to increase national wealth and improve public welfare, and to position Malaysia as a competitive global business hub. Lastly, the importances of 1MDB are as a transparency in financial management, accountability in government-linked companies, good governance and ethical leadership, as well as effective auditing and anti-corruption measures.
Now, I would like to talk about the overview of the scandal. First, 1MDB or One Malaysia Development Berhad was established in 2009 by the Malaysian government. Its main objective was to promote Malaysia economic development by attracting foreign investment and funding strategic projects. So, to finance this project, 1MDB borrowed large amount of money through loans and international bond issuance. These funds were intended to support investment in national development projects that were expected to benefit the country's economy. However, instead of being used for their intended purposes, a significant amount of the fund was allegedly diverted or misappropriated. According to investigation, the money was moved to shell companies, offshore bank accounts, and complex financial structures, making the transaction difficult to trace. One of the earliest warning signs appeared in 2009 during 1MDB Petro-Saudi joint venture. Investigators later found that large sum of money had been transferred under questionable arrangement, raising concern about whether the fund were being managed properly. As a result, the case led to serious allegations, including misappropriation of public funds, abuse of power, money laundering, bribery, and a lack of accountability. This allegation eventually developed into one of the largest financial scandals in history. Now, we look at how the scandal was uncovered. So, the scandal first came to reveal through investigative journalism and whistleblowers. In 2015, investigative journalist Claire Brown from Sarawak Report published report based on leaked internet email and financial document. So many of these documents were provided by Xavier Justo, which is a former executive of Petro Saudi. So following this revelation, international media organizations, including the Wall Street Journal, reported suspicious financial transactions and alleged that funds had been transferred into personal accounts linked to senior Malaysian officials. So this report attracted worldwide public attention. At the same time, more leaked documents revealed how money from the 1MDB Petro Saudi joint venture had been moved through multiple countries using layered financial structures to hide the flow of funds, making it difficult to trace. As evidence continued to emerge, law enforcement and regulatory agencies from several countries, including Malaysia, the United States, Singapore, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Hong Kong, Seychelles, launched investigation to trace the missing money and identify those who involved. Overall, the combined effort of investigative journalists, whistleblowers, media organisations, and international authorities transformed the 1MDB case into one of the world's biggest financial corruption scandal. So, it's resulted in legal action, recovery of billions of dollars in assets, and increased call for greater transparency, stronger governance and better accountability in managing public funds.
Thank you, Adila. Next, I will discuss the key individuals involved in the 1MDB scandal. So the first one, we have Najib Razak, who was the former Prime Minister of Malaysia and also held positions that gave him significant influence over 1MDB, as we can see in the slide. The second one will be Jolo. Jolo is a Malaysian businessman and investment banker. So although he had no official role in 1MDB, investigation identified him as a central figure in coordinating financial transactions linked to the scandal. And the third one will be Riza Aziz, who is a film producer and Najib Razak's stepson, whose business activities later become part of the investigation. So, understanding these individuals help us to see how abuse of power, personal connection, and weak oversight contributed to the misuse of the public funds. Next, I will be talking about their role in 1MDB case and allegation and legal outcomes for each individuals. So, starting with Najib Razak, he was the key government figure overseeing 1MDB. So due to his multiple roles that I already mentioned in the slide before, so there was a concentration of authority with limited checks and balance. So investigation found that funds linked to 1MDB entered account associated with him. So he claimed that there were political donations. However, the courts rejected this explanation. So eventually, he was convicted on charges involving abuse of power, criminal breach of trust, and money laundering. So this demonstrates how a lack of accountability and conflict of interest can undermine public trust. As for Jolo, the investigator alleged that he orchestrated the diversion of 1MDB funds through offshore companies and shell accounts. So the case highlights how influential individuals can exploit weak financial oversight and inadequate due diligence. So until this day, he remained as a fugitive wanted by authorities. And the last one, Riza Aziz, was linked to the use of funds allegedly originating from the 1MDB to finance film production, including project under Red Granite Picture. And he has a famous, he was linked to the famous film production, which is the Wolf Streets. So while he denied the intentional wrongdoing, the case raised concerns regarding money laundering through international business activities. So the matter was eventually resolved through a settlement, and he received a discharge not amounting to an acquittal. So moving on, the 1MDB scandal was not also limited to individuals. Major financial institutions were also implicated. So Goldman Sachs assisted 1MDB in raising approximately 6.5 billion USD through a bond issuance. So they have acted as a main arranger for 3 major bond deals, as you can see. And then, however, the investigators question whether the sufficient due diligence and risk assessment has been conducted. So the bank earned unusually high fees from this transaction and later reached multi-billion dollars settlements with authorities. So these illustrate that even established financial institutions can contribute to financial misconduct when governance and compliance mechanism fails. Now, these two individuals are actually bankers involved in Goldman Sachs Bank. So the first one is Tim Lesner, who is a managing director and involved in structuring the 1MDB bond deals. So he later pleaded guilty to bribery and money laundering offences and cooperated with the investigators and sentenced to 2 years in prison. While Roger Ang, who was another Goldman Sachs executive involved in executing this transaction, so he was later convicted in the United States and sentenced to 10 years in prison. So from these two individuals, basically highlights the importance of ethical conduct and compliance among financial professionals. Finally, the YNDP investigation involved cooperation between Malaysian and international enforcement agencies. So, for Malaysian agencies such as Malaysia Anti-Corruption Commission (MACC), Bank Negara Malaysia, Royal Malaysia Police, and the Attorney General Chambers investigate corruption, financial misconduct, and prosecution matters. While for international authorities, including the US Department of Justice, Singaporean authorities, MAS, and Swiss authorities assisted in tracing assets and investigating cross-border transactions. So from this, demonstrate that financial crimes are global in nature and require international cooperation, institutional independence, and strong regulatory enforcement. So that's all from me. Now I will pass it to my next teammates to continue the presentation.
Next, I will explain the root causes of 1MDB corruption scandal. There are three main factors. The first one is the concentration and abuse of power, where former Prime Minister Najib Razak held two powerful positions at the same time. He was both the Prime Minister and the Chairman of the 1MDB Advisory Board. This concentration of authority gave him significant control over 1MDB and allowed major financial decisions to be made with limited oversight and increase the risk of abuse of power. The second one is weak internal control and governance. According to Auditor General's report in 2016, 1MDB management violated the Company Act 1965. In addition, important financial decisions were made without proper board audits, and some board members were provided with false information, and several major transactions were approved without board consent. These weaknesses allow the mismanagement of funds to continue. And finally, restricted access and redaction. During the investigation, the Auditor General's team faced difficulty because they were denied access to important 1MDB document, computer, and also the server. Furthermore, the original Auditor General's report was reportedly altered by removing information that could have implicated Najib Razak, Loh Tejo, and also the others. This lack of transparency made it much harder to uncover the truth. So overall, these three factors, abuse of power, weak governance, and also the restricted access to information, created an environment that enabled the corruption to occur and remain undetectable for a very long period.
Now we will be talking about the role of integrity and ethics. So let's begin by analyzing how the four fundamental pillars of integrity were explicitly violated in this case. So the first one, accountability, completely broke down. Public accountability requires that decision makers remain answerable to oversight the boards, but instead the 1MDB's internal management intentionally weaken the financial monitoring mechanism to bypass the standard board risk assessment. And second one, transparency was completely obliterated. A healthy system keeps its financial workflow visible. 1MDBs did the opposite, where they're utilizing a highly complex layered network of offshore shells companies across international tax havens to execute hidden transactions, effectively blinding external watchdogs. And the third one, we look at honesty, where these billions of dollars in public funds were legally and morally earmarked for national development and citizen welfare, using them to fund a lavish lifestyle of super yacht, luxury real estate, and Hollywood films is a direct violation of institutional honesty. And finally, the responsibility was abandoned, where public office is a fiduciary duty by concentrating immense political and financial power within a single individual who was simultaneously the prime minister, finance minister, and one MDB advisory chairman. So the entire system of checks and balance was dismantled, resulting in an absolute abuse of public positions. Moving on to the broader systemic failures, this crisis highlights a psychological and organizational phenomenon known as ethical fading. And this is where a corporate culture reframes grand corruptions into routine, complex financial transactions so that individuals stop questioning the morality of their actions. So, and in this fading starts with a deeply flowed tone at the top. Because of the intense concentration of political power, a culture of blind obedience took over, and subordinates and internal board members would try to raise red flag with silence or face aggressive career retaliations. And furthermore, we must address the total ethical collapse of external professional gatekeepers, where internal auditing firms who are legally bound to act as public watchdogs were rapidly rotated or dismissed the moment they ask difficult questions about assets and evaluations. Concurrently, the global banking giant engaged in willful blindness, intentionally bypassing anti-money laundering protocol simply to secure lucrative transaction fees. Next, we must understand the true lasting cause of these ethical failures. And public officials are not owners of national wealth. They are temporary custodians. They hold a strict moral mandate to protect public funds for the benefits of society they serve. When leaders break this promise and abuse their entrust power for personal and political preservation, the true casualty is not just the money, it is the public trust. So corruption fractures citizen confidence in public administrations, law enforcement, and democratic institutions, rebuilding a nation's damaged international reputation and restoring societal moral takes generations. So this case reminds us that a strong culture of ethics is not optional, and it is essential to the survival of national governance.
Moving on to the impact and consequences of the scandal. The 1MDB scandal is considered one of the most significant financial corruption cases in Malaysia history. It involved the mismanagement and alleged misappropriation of billions of ringgit from a state investment fund. The consequences of the scandal extended beyond financial losses and affected multiple dimensions of society. It created major challenges for Malaysia's economic stability, political credibility, and public trust in institutions. The scandal also exposed weaknesses in governance, financial oversight, and accountability mechanism. Overall, it highlights how corruption can have a long-term effects on the national development and international reputation. Let's look at the first point of the impact and consequence of the scandal. From an economic perspective, it increased national debt due to large liabilities. This also will lead to misuse of public funds meant for development and lead to reduced spending on healthcare, education, and infrastructure. All of these will lead to loss of investor confidence in Malaysia and weaken the economic stability and credibility. Moving on to this next impact on the political impact. It will lead to decline in public trust toward government leaders and exposure of weakness in governance and oversight. This also will lead to investigation and court cases involving key figures and increased demand for political reform and transparency. All of this will lead to consequences of political pressure and instability. Next, further social impact. From the scandal, the negative impact would be public disappointment over misuse of national fund that will lead to loss of trust in government institutions. However, the positive impact would be increased awareness of corruption and ethics, lead to a stronger demand for integrity and accountability, and of course, cover the greater public and media scrutiny. And lastly, on the international impact, of course, the scandal will damage the Malaysia's global reputation. This will lead our country to be investigated by multiple other countries such as US, Singapore, and Switzerland. All of this could lead to a negative international media coverage and lead to reduced foreign investor confidence in investing in our country. All of this, of course, will have a consequences of increased global scrutiny on governance practices.
Hi, my name is Baria, and today I will be explaining about the investigation and also legal action taken for the One Malaysian Development Berhad case. So the investigation begins after the reports claimed that billions of dollars were missing from the 1MDB. And investigative journalists and also international media revealed that suspicious financial transaction involving the fund. So it was illegal that the money intended for the national development has been diverted into the private account. So next will be the domestic investigation that is held in Malaysia. So several Malaysian agencies that investigate the case include the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, which is MACC, and Royal Malaysia Police, which is we call it as a PDRM, Bank Negara Malaysia, and also Public Account Committee, which is PAC. And the investigator examined, which is a bank record, money transfer, company transaction, loan agreement, and also offshore account. Not only in Malaysia, we also involve the investigation in international because the money moved through multiple accounts. Countries and authorities worldwide will launch the investigation, that including United States Department of Justice, which is DOJ, Federal Bureau of Investigation, which is FBI, Monetary Authority of the Singapore, Swiss authorities, and also Luxembourg authorities. And also the investigator trust fund that were illegal to use to purchase, which is first of all is the luxury properties such as house, super yachts, artwork, jewelry, and also Hollywood film that financing, including the Wolf of the Wall Streets. And the investigation conclude that the billions of the US dollar were being misappropriated through the complex money laundering scheme. So this case also involved the financial forensic. So the investigator used is the bank transaction analysis, asset tracing, mutual legal assistance between the countries, and also witness interview and document analysis. So this will help to reconstruct the movement of the funds across the numerous bank accounts and also shell companies. So next, I will be explaining about the legal action taken in this case. So first of all is the criminal charge against the Najib Razak. So our former Prime Minister, which is Najib Razak, will face the multiple criminal charge, including the criminal breach of trust, abuse of power, and also money laundering. And this charge related to the fund that linked to the 1MDB and also its former subsidiary, which is we call it as the SRC International. In 2020, Najib was found guilty in the CRC International case and he was sentenced to imprisonment and fine. After appeals, Malaysia Highest Court upheld the conviction in 2022, making the verdict final. So the result was later reduced to Malaysian pardon process, but the conviction remains. So the legal action was also taken against the other individuals, which is Law Tech Joe, which is we call it as the Joe Law, that accused of masterminding the embezzlement of the case, and he has been charged in the multiple jurisdiction but remain a fugitive. and also involve the former 1MDB executive and also bankers and financial professionals that are illegal to have facilitated the illicit transaction. So the government sought to recover the purchase using the illegal stolen funds. So the recover or seized asset include the luxury real estate, bank account, artwork, jewelry, we call it as a equanimity, and also proceed related to the Wolf of the Wall Street. And billions of dollars in assets have been recovered and returned through settlement and forfeiture action. CBIL also imposed fines on financial institutions for the anti-money laundering failures and also revoked or restricted the licenses of some financial institutions involved, and also strengthened the anti-money laundering regulation and also corporate of the governance requirements. That's all from me. Thank you.
Now, I will be presenting the lessons learned from the 1MDB scandals. Rather than focusing on the scandal itself, I will explain what organizations, governments, and future professionals like us can learn from this incident. The 1MDB scandal is considered one of the largest financial scandals in the world. It involves billions of dollars that were supposed to be used for Malaysia's economic development but were instead misappropriated through fraud, money laundering, and abuse of power. This scandal affected Malaysia's economy, damaged the country's international reputation, and reduced public trust in government institutions. More importantly, it taught us many valuable lessons about the governance, ethics, and accountability. Now, let's look at these lessons one by one. The first lesson is the importance of good corporate governance. Corporate governance refers to the system of rules and processes used to direct and control an organization. In the 1MDB case, there were weaknesses in the board's oversight and important decisions were not properly monitored. This allowed individuals to misuse funds without effective checks and balance. The lesson here is that organizations must have independent board members, clear responsibilities, and proper supervision to prevent abuse of power. The second lesson is transparency and accountability. Transparency means being open and honest about financial activities, while accountability means taking responsibility for decisions and actions. One reason the scandal continued for years was the lack of transparent financial reporting. If organizations regularly publish accurate financial information and conduct independent audits, fraud can be detected much earlier. Transparency also helps build public trust. The third lesson is the importance of strong internal controls. Internal controls include policies such as approval procedures, separation of duties, and regular financial monitoring. Without these controls, fraudulent transactions may go unnoticed. Organizations should also identify financial risks early and continuously improve their risk management system. This helps prevent fraud before it becomes a major problem. The fourth lesson is that regulatory and enforcement agencies must be independent. Institutions such as anti-corruption agencies, auditors, and law enforcement should investigate cases fairly without political influence. When these agencies operate independently, corruption can be detected more effectively and those responsible can be held accountable regardless of their position. The fifth lesson is ethical leadership. Even with good policies, an organization cannot succeed without leaders who act honestly and responsibly. Leaders should set a good example by making ethical decisions and managing resources with integrity. When leaders behave ethically, employees are more likely to follow the same values. And as a future healthcare professionals, these lessons is especially important because society places great trust in us. Integrity is essential in every profession, especially in medicine. And the sixth lesson is the importance of protecting whistleblowers. Sometimes employees notice suspicious activities before anyone else. However, if they fear losing their jobs or facing punishment, they may remain silent. Strong whistleblowers protection encourage people to report misconduct safely and confidentially. Early reporting can prevent significant financial losses and corruption. And finally, the scandal teaches us how difficult it is to rebuild public trust once it has been lost. Trust can only be restored through transparency, fair investigation, legal action against those responsible, and continuous institutional reforms. Building trust takes years, but losing it can happen very quickly. Thus, in conclusion, the 1MDB scandal reminds us that corruption can happen when governance is weak and accountability is lacking. The key lessons we can learn are good corporate governance, transparency and accountability, strong internal controls, independent enforcement agencies, ethical leadership, whistleblowers protection, restoring public trust, and yeah, that's it. If these principles are consistently applied, organization can reduce the risk of corruption and protect public resource. Thus, as a future professionals, whether in healthcare, business, or government, we all have a responsibility to uphold integrity, accountability, and ethical conduct in our careers.
After hearing about what happened in the 1MDB scandal, I will now present the recommendations and prevention measures to ensure this never happen again in our country. I will be covering 6 points. First, improve transparency, strengthen audits, stronger anti-corruption laws, protection for whistleblowers, ethics education, and reduce concentration of power. Firstly, improve transparency. In 1MDB, financial transactions were completely hidden from the public. No one knew where billions were going. As solution, we need mandatory public disclosure of all GLC financial statements, real-time reporting for large transactions, online access to government contracts, and annual public briefings. Secondly, strengthen audits. The Auditor General couldn't properly investigate because they were denied access to 1MDB computers. Even worse, the original audit report was erased. Therefore, we need mandatory annual audits with full access to all documents, rotation of audit firms to prevent conflicts of interest, and independent audit committees with real financial experts. Thirdly, stronger anti-corruption laws. Existing laws were too weak and loopholes were exploited. Thus, we need enhanced penalties, corporate liability, extended statute of limitations for complex investigation, stricter anti-money laundering laws, and we must prohibit politicians from holding GLC executive positions. Also, mandatory assets declaration for all public officials and their families. Next, protect whistleblowers. People were too afraid to report their 1MDB misconduct. As a result, we need comprehensive protection laws, anonymous reporting channels, financial incentive, legal aid, criminal penalties for retaliation, and identity protection in court. Whistleblowers are society consciences. Furthermore, ethics education. The scandal happened because of a culture of impunity where ethics were not prioritized. Therefore, in school, we need integrate integrity into the curriculum. In university, we need make ethics courses mandatory. And in workplaces, we need provide ethics training and enforce codes of conduct. We need to build a culture where corruption is unacceptable. Finally, reduce concentration of power. Najib Razak was Prime Minister, Financial Minister and Chairman of 1MDB. This gave him unchecked authority over billions. As Claire Newcastle-Brown said, this concentration of power eroded checks and balances. Due to this, we need separation of politics from GLC management, independent oversight, parliamentary investigative power, judicial independence, and free media.
In conclusions, the 1MDB scandal demonstrates how the absence of integrity, transparency, and also accountability can lead to serious consequences. The misuse of public funds not only resulted in significant financial loss, but it's also damaged the Malaysia international reputations and also reduced the public trust in government's institutions. So this case reminded us that ethical leadership and responsible decision making are essential in managing the public resources. Moving forward, stronger governance, independence oversight, and also effective anti-corruption measures are necessary to ensure that similar scandals do not happen again.